Hey everybody. So I'm sitting in my car here today because what I wanted to do is a follow-up to the previous video I did about owning my Tesla Model 3 for 6 years and giving kind of a review and rundown of that. I wanted to follow that up with a video today about the 10 things that have surprised me most about owning an electric vehicle, and in my case, a Tesla, in random order. But I wanted to start with what might come across or seem like kind of a no-duh thing about owning an electric vehicle. But the biggest surprise to me of owning an electric vehicle, this is going to just sound dumb, but is owning an electric vehicle. So what do I mean by that? Hear me out, it'll make sense. I started driving in 1978 when I got my driver's permit. So I've been driving for 48 years, and only the last 6 of those years have been in an electric vehicle. So the overwhelming majority of my driving years has been in a gasoline vehicle. It's only been the last 6 out of 48 years. I don't know the math on that, but whatever the percentage is, it's a small percentage of my driving time has been in an electric vehicle. And here's why that's important. I, like many of you who were brought up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever like that, electric vehicles were not a thing. And so all of my years, my first car, when my wife and I were dating, and after we were married and had kids and we got the minivan, did all the family things, all of that life has been lived in in gasoline vehicles, not an electric vehicle. So owning an electric vehicle, I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I needed to get a new car. And that might sound like it's not that big of a deal, but to shift from driving the vast majority of your life in gasoline cars to an electric car is a huge, huge shift. It just changes everything in terms of your driving experience and what to expect and all that. So I'll get into that. So that's my first, number one, huge surprise about having an electric car. It's having an electric car, just because it's so very, very different from a gasoline car. So we'll go through some of the things that surprised me. So the first big surprise is how little I think about, having to gas up the car, going and stopping somewhere for fuel. In my previous car, it had a smaller gas tank. It seemed like I was stopping to get gas all the time. And now I just drive past all the gas stations. And, in Southern California, where our gas prices here in mid-August of 2026 are still, hovering around the high fives there, some in the low sixes. You go from the 89 octane to the 92 or 94, whatever the numbers are. I've even forgotten that. But the highest octane's closing in on $6 in Southern California. So I have no problem with, not having to fuel up the car. So that was a huge surprise to me, never having to think about that. And that's because I can fuel up at home, so to speak, by just plugging the car in at the end of the day, and it automatically charges the car in the middle of the night. I can schedule when, so I have my scheduled charging time to start at 2 in the morning. The next huge surprise to me was what's called one pedal driving. That might sound like a weird thing to you, but I had never heard of this until I got an electric car. Now, I don't think this is only exclusive to Tesla vehicles, but I know that Teslas do this, and maybe some other cars don't. But what it basically means is that while you're out driving around, you can set the car to use what's called the regenerative braking to slow down the car, so that you almost never need to use your brakes. Now, of course, there is a brake pedal, but that was a huge surprise to me that, there was this availability of this one pedal driving, and I barely ever have to use the brakes, because as I take my foot off the accelerator, the car shows that a little green line comes on the screen and shows that as it's slowing down, it's regeneratively braking, which means that it's using the friction or something in the motors to slow the car down, which regenerates the battery, which is really cool. So that's an amazing thing. You can set it to, back to being like a regular car, to where you're just driving and it coasts up to a stop. But I really love the one pedal driving because it saves, me from having to do brake jobs. And one thing I can't stand is having to spend a ton of money on maintenance like everybody else. Nobody wants to spend money fixing their car. And that brings me to the third huge surprise in owning an electric vehicle, and that is how little routine maintenance there is. Other than changing tires or rotating tires or whatever, there's really no maintenance. I mean, I fill up the washer fluid, which is easy task. But other than that, I haven't had to do any real significant maintenance on the car, which is nice, because again, when you're having to replace fan belts and have things checked because you heard a noise and such like that, it can get pretty expensive. So I'm glad so far, after 6 years, all I've ever done really is buy one new pair of tires and have the tires rotated. The fourth thing that really surprised me is how much this Tesla has changed in the 6 years that I've had it, just through the over-the-air software updates. I mean, there have been a ton of software updates on this car that have been sent through, which totally, basically change a lot of the functions that the car has. And there have been a lot of them, so I can't just go into them all right now, but it keeps the car newish and fresh, and it's almost like getting a new car every time they do a significant software update. And so that's been really good, because it keeps updating the functions that the car can do, the electronics can do, the car itself can do, and those are great, because it keeps on changing as the car evolves through the software updates. That's been a great surprise to me, that you could even do that. But of course, in our modern age, you can do that. So I mentioned ago the importance of tires. I said I've rotated the tires and such. That was another huge surprise to me, and that is how important tires become when you have an electric car. Because with an electric car, you're sitting on this huge array of batteries all over the bottom of the car, and they make the car heavy. So electric cars tend to be heavier than non-electric cars, which can be really hard on the tires. The other thing that can be hard on tires is that electric cars tend to have a ton of torque. So in a Tesla, when you're sitting at a stoplight and the light turns green and you push down the accelerator, I mean, the car will just take off faster. You'll leave everybody in the dust, typically, unless they also are driving a Tesla and doing the same thing you are. But I mean, it's fast. But those kinds of jackrabbit starts where you get going really quickly, those are really hard on tires. And so you end up having to get tires more often if you're doing those kinds of accelerations. Now, I tend to, take it a little bit easier. Knowing the cost of tires these days, I tend to make sure that I'm not driving in that sort of a fashion that it's going to cost me new tires all the time. But that was another surprise. So the other number 6 on my list is that has been a really big surprise to me, is how much I've enjoyed using my cell phone as the key for the car. You can set it up through the Tesla app, and maybe some other cars are doing this too, maybe even not just electric but gas cars too. But with the app, I can start the air conditioning or heating going, depending upon what the weather is, and none of that is using up gasoline. And I can do all kinds of things on the app. In a Tesla, this is more for Teslas, I can even take a look at what's happening around my car using all the cameras that it has. No matter where I am in the world, if I want to look on the, push the little Sentry thing on my app, I can see on my phone what's going on with my car, what's happening around it, what's happening inside it because of those cameras. So that's a terrific thing. And of course, you also have the awesome feature that Teslas have, and that's called Summon. So if I'm in a parking lot somewhere and I don't feel like walking all the way to the car and I can see it way down there a ways, I just push the Summon button on my thing and it brings the car, to me. And I remember once this happening, my son and I were somewhere and we pushed the Summon button and the car just kept coming to us. And this little group of teenagers were like, "Oh, look at that car, there's nobody driving it. I swear, you guys, there's nobody in that car." So it's kind of hilarious to watch. So anyway, that's the phone app for Teslas is just terrific, and it's something, and the phone itself becomes the key. So as soon as I walk up and open the door. I can open the doors without having to get out a key. I can start the car without having to have a key fob around. I can open the trunk or whatever. So that's been terrific. The seventh thing that was a huge surprise to me is how quiet the car is when you come up to a stop sign. Now, in my other uh, in my previous video about what it's like to own this car for 6 years, I did talk about road noise as one of the things I really didn't like. So when I'm on the freeway or something like that, that's when this particular model, that's 6 years old without the sound deadening of the newer models, gets pretty noisy. But with owning an electric car, you come up to a stop sign and you don't have the air conditioning blasting for that to make a lot of noise or loud music on. If you have nothing else going on and you just come up to a red light, it's just dead silent. So well, that was a huge surprise to me, because owning gasoline cars with engines and motor noises and all that stuff, sitting at a stoplight, you can hear all of that. So this was, and you can feel the vibrations of the engine and such. But in this car, you just come up and it's quiet. So that was kind of, a big surprise. Number 8, the huge surprise to me was, remember I was telling you how I kind of labored about the thought of, or really had to consider, do I really want to get an electric car? What about the issues with range and all the other things? So the big surprise here is how little all those things eventually became, and how normal electric car ownership was after all of that time. The range isn't an issue for me, especially having a Tesla. Tesla has embedded supercharger stations all over the country, so you can plan a trip all around the country, and the car, if you're going from California to Chicago or something, the car will route your way all the way along, calculating in stops at superchargers so to charge up, so you're never having to be without fuel. And so that became a non-issue. The anxiety range, charging, I wasn't sure how that was going to work out, whether the battery would last a long time. But after 6 years of owning this car, the big surprise to me is that all that stuff, all those concerns and anxieties I had about a lot of those things, just melted into nothing, and it's like owning a regular car. And so that's good to have that peace of mind. The number 9 thing that really surprises me after all these years of owning an electric car is the things that I underestimated before getting an electric car. And some of those things overlap with some of the stuff I've already talked about. But I underestimated the convenience of having an electric car. As I mentioned, it is so convenient to not have to fuel up, to not have to worry about things breaking that typically would break in a regular car, fan belts and spark plug replacements, and replacing the oil in a gasoline car is a big thing, and it's an important maintenance thing. You have to do it to keep your engine running properly. Don't have to do that in an electric car. So I underestimated a lot of those things about how much more convenient owning an electric car would be. And the 10th big surprise to me, it kind of overlaps back with number 1. Remember I said that number 1 was kind of a no-duh moment. The big surprise of having an electric car to me was having an electric car after, a life history of gasoline cars. So the 10th thing kind of overlaps with that, because the big surprise there is that if I, had for some reason, lost this Tesla, or it became, declared a total loss because a refrigerator fell on it or something, who knows, but just making stuff up, or if there were an accident that caused it to be destroyed, I probably would not go back to getting a gasoline car, because of now everything I know from owning an electric car, and especially this Tesla. Now again, this video is not a Tesla commercial. I'm not getting paid for this. It's just me giving up my opinions about life with an electric car, which makes it more valuable because it's real life experience rather than an infomercial or something like that, which is what we like to do on this channel, and that is give honest reviews and opinions on things, so that you can make good and informed decisions. So those are the 10 big things that have surprised me about owning an electric car for 6 years. I hope this video has helped. It would sure help our channel to grow if you like and subscribe. And even more importantly, leave a comment down in the comments box. If you've owned an electric car and you were surprised with some things and in other ways, maybe that they were more negative for you, your experience was more negative than what I've had, leave a comment down below. I would love to hear from all of you about what your experiences are, what your opinions are about electric car ownership in these modern days. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.